Welcome to our podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Terry McKim, the creator, founder, and chief innovation officer of Tippy, which is a digital tipping platform designed to simplify reporting while financially empowering the various service professionals that have grown to love this innovative new model for accepting, processing, and receiving their tips. Terry is a seasoned entrepreneur with decades of experience in the marketing and digital advertising space, and Tippy is a testament to this innovative thinking and disruptive attitude. Tippy, under Terry's leadership, has been making waves in the service industry. The company has seen significant growth, and although still in their early stages, they've processed over 150 million in payments last year alone. And Terry's vision for Tippy is really to create a technology company that makes lives better through innovative thoughts, disruptive actions, and some plain and simple smarts. And from what we can see, he's doing just that. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation, learn more about Terry's journey and the story behind Tippy. So welcome to the show, Terry.
Thanks. That's a heck of an intro.
We're trying to make them as long as possible. So hopefully I won on that, right?
Hey, I'll take it. If I can get my family to do that when I walk in the door, it'd be fantastic.
That's right. I'll send them the script. We'll get them on there pretty soon for you. So I know I give you that long intro there, but we've known each other for a little while now. You have I think a really cool story behind, this product that you've created. A lot of people may not be aware of it. So we thought we want to get this out there. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about who Tippy is, what inspired you to start the company, and kind of, what was that launching point for you?
Yeah. So it's funny. It's kind of a full circle-ish story, and I always tell the background because I think it's important to see how it kind of goes around. I grew up, my mom was a hairstylist. I think back then it wasn't such a bad thing, but she was, I know she was cutting hair at home, in our apartment in Coatesville.
Listen, my mom was a hairstylist too, and I struggled through her doing perms in our kitchen, and that smell, I still think I'd be more intelligent if it weren't for that back in the day.
That stays in the nostrils for a while. It definitely singes the hairs, but the perms, every time she wanted to test a tool, it was on me and my sister, or a new color. So it definitely went through but free haircuts, so I couldn't complain. So I grew up, and as cliche as it might sound, the full circle there is tips put food on our table. And I remember then, and that was the 80s, early 90s. It was cash tips, the kind of the cash under the mattress mentality. And so to be at a grocery store and literally you see my mom use her tips to buy the groceries, or we'd be at Kmart or Jamesway and I would ask for a G.I. Joe, and it was here's then it was like, here's like $4 to get something
right
for now. But it was neat to see that kind of come full circle and end up back in the tipping thing. But I ended up working for a salon going out of college. Long story short, I was director of marketing and a chain of salons in Pennsylvania called Lords and Ladies, family friend. And during that time, I happened just to walk in one day for a meeting. ADP payroll was in pitching their payroll services. And I just happened to listen to Terry Durr, the owner, talking about tipping. I knew tipping. I knew it's important. I know it's a good source of income for stylists and service professionals, but I didn't know the logistics or the pain points. And as I'm sitting there and I hear how tips are processed and, the processing fees he pays, so he's paying these, 3+% to process the tips, and then payroll taxes to put it in payroll, and then how stylists and service professionals want their tips instantly. But they don't want to wait 2 weeks. So I start to hear these gripes and moans about the how much of a pain in the butt it was. And then we put ATMs in so that we can have clients get out cash. And we stopped tipping at one point on credit cards. We were paying cash out then a night, as you can imagine, having thousands of dollars behind the counter and having someone manage that. Some dollars end up going MIA, so it's not ideal. And then as I sat back and kind of heard all this, I started just asking questions to other salon owners I knew and realized it wasn't just us, it was nationwide. And it's this migration from cash to plastic. And the salon industry for some, happened to be kind of just falling behind there. So that was during the ADP, meeting. My ADD kicked in and pitched out this idea.
The light bulb went off, right?
Just get this idea of like a digital type of process and tipping on the back piece of paper, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. And I think that's, you talk about the importance of the tips for the people in that category, right? And that is, I think when you look at Bureau of Labor Statistic data and everybody else, it's not a high earning class typically of individuals. So that money being accessible to them in a quicker turnaround time is really critical
Yeah.
for a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those nice solutions that your system has created for them. And we'll get into that a little bit more later, but is around how quickly they can actually access
Yeah.
that, how much that takes away from the responsibility of the salon owner, right? As well, too.
Yeah. It's a
And there's a couple
motivator.
of,
Yeah. It's TIP
yeah,
stands for, originally when it was created, I guess it's to ensure proper service. The whole idea was this tip is to ensure the service you expect or that you want. Um, and that's the mentality. It's rewarding. It's gratuity. It's gratitude. That's the pat on
yeah,
the back that you keeps you motivated. In the service industries that are tough. Whether you're a
yeah.
waiter, waitress, hairstylist, massage therapist. You have some tough days, and that tip, keep you motivated.
And I'd say too, we all pre-COVID, this was a big thing to begin with, right? You had expectations around tipping. I feel like COVID created this entirely new tipping experience,
Yeah,
right, for a lot of people. Like we did see an increase in both probably the number of tips and who was getting tipped, and maybe even what that meant as a percentage of the overall bill that you were actually tipping on,
yeah,
right? We probably saw increases there
yeah,
too. And I don't know if there's a leveling out a little bit now, but I think more and more people are kind of locked into that going forward. So from an expansion perspective, how do you kind of see that too? Is that something where I know the growth numbers that have been put out for, just even the salon industry and how many stylists are going to grow, and it's almost double digits across the board in a number of those
yeah.
areas. And so that market is going to continue to expand. But, how did you, maybe I'll go back a little bit. How did that idea from that time when you were in that meeting, you kind of heard, you recognized from talking to others, this is a real challenge for everybody. The interesting story where we hear so many business owners, I think, come up with great ideas is through their own pain points and frustrations, right? Where they're like, hey, there are solutions out there, but there's not the one that I think would work the best. And here's the one little hiccup or two things that if I could change that, all of a sudden would be a game changer,
Yeah.
right? So I think from me talking to you, it sounds like that's where your mind was, right? Is, hey, here's the couple things that if we could change this, it solves so many issues for us moving forward, right?
Yep.
And it's tough when you have a product that you have to educate people on, right? Versus just it's easy to use,
Yeah.
I get it,
Yeah.
right? But I think you've done a good job of doing a little bit of both. There's a little education on the front end. Once they use it, I think it sells itself. But maybe just talk about how did you flip that switch from, okay, I have this idea, to how did I actually start to get traction on it
Yeah.
and move this forward?
Yeah. So the whole idea there was, okay, how can we? It's not that customers didn't want it to, they're willing to your point. COVID definitely excelled that. I think we all became appreciative of the services we were getting daily that we might have taken for
Yeah.
granted. Um, but at that moment, again, it's not an overnight success. That's one thing I think I learned that earlier, and I remember every other digital entrepreneur telling me it doesn't happen overnight. And my impatience
Yeah.
told me, I'm like, hey, I could do this. But we've been working on it for a while. We took our time. We built a beta, and then that was the first thing we did, which is to create a system where it would be a separate process than the original checkout, where a customer could directly tip the service professional. Ironically, that was the first name of the company, Direct Tips. So the whole
Yeah.
idea was to directly tip them. So, um, and we built that. Is something we patched together to kind of prove the concept. It was a separate kiosk. Once we kind of had the product, we knew we wanted to launch, nationwide essentially. It was like, okay, how can we get some traction? Here, how can we? Lords and Ladies was a 7-location salon and spa that allowed us to really prove it and build what we needed to scale, but we needed that monster to kind of go, and that's where we're fortunate. We're L'Oreal salon. We had a great relationship with L'Oreal. And I'll never forget, Pat Parenti was the president of L'Oreal PPD, which is their professional product division.
Yeah.
And they have multiple divisions of products under that umbrella. But I happened to pitch it to him. He or one of his partners were in the salon. They saw it, happened to stand there and kind of give like a self pitch. I'm like, hey, check this out. This is pretty cool. Like, right. Like L'Oreal should sell this, and good timing was they are looking for digital products to offer businesses to help them save money or make their stylists better. And I was fortunate enough and unfortunate enough that he called me and said, hey, loved it. Come to New York in 2 weeks and pitch it to 32 general managers.
So you hit the right audience. Yeah.
Here I am like, oh boy, like the dog who's called the truck, and I'm like, my teeth on the bumper. I'm like, now what? Like,
Yeah.
so good news is we went in and we were able to really pitch the product and the how we saw it scaling. And even though it was a separate kiosk, some people couldn't get their mind across that. They looked at everything as a single transaction, and it allowed us to say, hey, no, this can scale because you can plug and play. And customers actually like that idea of a separate tip transaction that they know is going directly to their favorite provider. So it ended up working out pretty well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what's that like to stand in front of a whole bunch of execs in New York, right, for the first time with a new product, first
Yeah,
pitch, basically, right?
yeah, it's nerve wracking. I'm the type, as long as I don't have to prep, I'll do well. If I prep, then I'll
You're good.
overdo it. But it was great because to me, it was like I just believed in the product. Like I think knowing what it did for our salons and spas had me
Yeah,
confident. Yeah, I knew I
yeah,
could. I knew it wasn't me up there pitching a concept that hasn't been proven yet. The fact that I did it and I had actual numbers to show, hey, this stylist tips went up, 20%, and
yeah.
here's a testimonial and that. So
That's
I
good.
was pretty semi confident, I should say.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we always tell everybody, the clients that we work with too, on whether they're looking for, venture capital money or they're looking to, exit to a third party, we say these companies typically are investing in the owner,
Yeah,
right? It's great to have a great product. It's great to have a solution. But if the person's passionate about it, understands the model, to your point, right? Like you can get up and say everything you need to know. It's so much better than just reading off of a pitch deck and saying, okay, yeah, this number is this or that. You can give that narrative that actually gives validity to the idea, the concept, and how they're actually going to move that forward and continue to make it successful. So I'm sure you did a fantastic job with that piece. It's
yeah,
interesting to me too. Probably a lot of people don't understand around the tipping piece some of the struggles. I think that when you're a good business owner who's trying to run things the right way, you're trying to be compliant with payroll taxes and everything else. Up until 1966, I think tipping wasn't included in payroll taxes, right? And then after that, it was instituted, and for a while, I guess what was it, 1993 maybe, they got a partial FICA tip credit, and I think it was 45B, which was the credit, which was really just for essentially the restaurant food service industry. So the employers can have that portion of tax reimbursed to them, but that doesn't apply to other industries like salon owners and people in the beauty space. So, that's tough, right? You're collecting money, paying tax on it that you don't end up getting as revenue.
yep,
Um, so maybe you can talk a little bit about there. I know there are a couple initiatives right now. I think the Professional Beauty Association, I see, has been lobbying too, right, for House Resolution 45 and Senate 45 versions, which would get it to be applicable to other industries, or at least into the beauty space too. And I know that has a number of co-sponsors on both sides of the aisle. So hopefully there's going to be some traction there for you guys in that space. But anything else that you'd say that, about that in particular? I don't know if there's any new updates there or not.
yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Just make
Yeah.
sure. All right, sorry, my neighbor
Yeah.
decided now
Gotcha.
is a good time to mow. So I'm going to
Not
continue.
Florida where they've banned the gas blowers and mowers, right? You need the electric versions.
Yeah. They yeah, so the 45B, it's funny, I got introduced to it pretty early on because I had this concept and I was trying to exhaust every resource I could as far as feedback from owners, stylists, and Myra, who was the head of government affairs at the PBA out in Arizona, who I had never met, but I reached out and said, hey, I got this crazy idea, can I talk to you? So we got on a phone
Yeah.
call, and I said, I have this idea about tipping. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, because it's digital and it's going to track everything. It's no longer cash, but we see where everything's going. And
Yeah.
she's like, oh my God, love it. Because to her, the whole idea is to legitimize everything, the tipping industry, and change that attitude of what I was talking about earlier, the cash under the mattress mentality. One is you want, as like young service professionals, if you talk to any veteran professional, they're going to tell you, like, you know what, start claiming your tips, get your tips in. It's going to help you in the long run. Trust me, you want to get that house, that car. And those were the things I wanted to accomplish. And with Myra, it was great to talk to and bounce all the ideas off. But then she introduced me to the 45B initiative. It's still in the works. It is, we go, with PBA, we'll go to Washington and we, state our case and we walk around the hallways and tell everybody and try to get the support we can. Yes, the restaurant industry was able to do it way back because obviously the money behind it. I believe our lobbying group that they set up was even based in Washington. If you think
Yeah.
about our group, obviously, there are PBA, you have salon owners, professionals, and it's really gaining traction, but they're all coming in from out of state. So you kind of get in front of whoever you need to, when you can.
Yeah.
The frustrating part about it, it's not a big lift, is you're not asking for something brand new. You're literally asking for an addition of, okay,
What they've already agreed to.
it's already agreed, and all you're doing is adding one line that this is applicable to service industries outside of restaurants.
Yeah.
Salon, spa, beauty, barbers, whatever you nail salons. So you're not asking for anything crazy, but to your point, it's really why the whole idea came up in my head when I was in that meeting with payroll with the ADP, and you hear, okay, I'm paying 3% in processing, and it comes in my account. It's money in, money out, and I'm essentially getting charged on both ends of it. And yes, like Tippy helps save on the processing fees on the front end, but the ultimate goal, and I have this list of things I want to accomplish since day one. Savings,
Yeah.
financially empowering the service professional, and in the end, hopefully getting that tip tax credit implemented. Obviously, great for our business model once that happens, but it's just good for the salon. I think the beauty industry in general. To say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
follow the rules, be above board, do it this way, make sure your staff's claiming all their tips. Here's what's going to help them, and we're motivating you by doing it. Yeah, and don't get me, it's not an easy lift. I get it. It doesn't happen overnight, but it's long overdue. And the PBA is doing an awesome job. Myra and Katie, they're doing an awesome job getting the support they need. We just got to figure out if there's some gasoline on it and really, really get it going.
Yeah, and it's not small numbers either. I think, I have old data, but from 2016 alone, they're estimating that, and this was from the Economic Policy Institute study, they said that there was over $36.4 billion in tips alone,
Yeah.
right? So that number is inevitably larger than that at this point. And again, they think that's probably even an underreported number because, to your point, right, there's a lot of ways that it's still being collected that's not traceable. So from that compliance perspective, if you could do a better job of tracking that, I know the IRS is big on wanting to have some more compliance around that space. You could funnel it in a much better way, still drive the benefit to the stylist and everybody who's the service worker, remove some of that headache and cost from the owners who are running the salons, right? So everybody wins. And plus, probably the IRS ends up with a few more dollars in their pocket, even if they do end up giving that payback to the salon owners, right? Because they're going to have an easier way to trace and track some of those tips. So, and I think it's interesting too. A lot of times, I know people say, oh, geez, I like having money under the table because all of a sudden, now I don't get taxed on it. But the reality is again, in those areas, trying to buy a house, trying to qualify for a car loan, there's so many things where you need to be able to show proof of employment and proof of funds from that. And so having the opportunity to have that documented, especially through a W-2, right, gives you so many more chances to qualify for some of those life events where that's a requirement. So there's benefits there in ways that I think it offsets, a couple extra bucks of taxes.
And that was kind of, I don't know if that was the aha moment. I think everyone says they have an aha moment. I think you have a dozen aha moments when you have a concept.
Yeah, for sure. When it's a good idea, yeah.
It's like you have aha moments all through the night, the first night you come up with it. But I think that was the big one, was at Lords and Ladies at a staff meeting. I'm sure I've told you this story before, or I've mentioned it usually, but we knew what we were going to do. I think what really motivated me that, okay, this is, I'm looking at as owner at the time, how can I help save processing fees or better that process, get rid of the ATM and all these antiquated ways. But I remember being in a staff meeting, 220 plus service professionals, mostly stylists, and talking about this idea. We built this, we're going to do this. And we're very, that Terry Durr, the owner there, was very transparent with the staff. So we would tell them everything. And here's what we're going to implement. You guys have been doing great with this beta. And I remember a young stylist, and I remember her being young because it baffled me to think is crazy. But she raises her hand and she tells the story about how she's been banking with the same bank, local bank, since she's been 14, 15, whenever her parents set up her account, and went to school, cosmetology school, all this stuff, been saving up money, of her tips, put it into that bank account, goes to get her first, whether it was apartment or condo, I can't remember. And the money's in the bank, and the bank tells her she can't, essentially she has no proof of how that cash got in there. And I'm thinking that's crazy. Like, she worked so hard for this. And to see that, like, that mindset of like, she's essentially defeated. Now, I'm sure she figured it out, but she obviously struggled to get that, that money that she deserved, that loan that she deserved. And, that was like, all right, I got to make this happen for the professionals, because this is crazy, and that,
Yeah.
and that's where we're really taking this, where we add all these benefits and these financial benefits to the service professional.
So maybe do us, even if it's an overview from 30,000 feet, right? Walk us through that process. So, right now, obviously, I'll say, when I go to a salon or somebody's in there, you could certainly, some take a credit card. Obviously, we've talked about some of the downside of that piece. Others, a third party app, Venmo, a Zelle, something similar to that, somebody might be utilizing. But walk us through, in your scenario, when somebody is utilizing the Tippy platform, how does that work from, let's say I come in from a salon owner's perspective, even from a customer, and then also from the actual, let's say, stylist perspective, right? So you can see how each person goes through that transition, how that's different for you guys.
Yeah. So, we have multiple products. I think that's something that's really defined us. You see a lot of tipping companies popping up now where they're a basic QR code or something very basic, where it's like essentially an e-com, platform they put up, and even the distribution of the tips on the back end is pretty antiquated. They're still waiting a week. I think we got in the game early, and we've been able to create a whole suite of products, but our key product, and really what now allowed us to launch, and I can touch on the other ones, but we call it our side-by-side, which essentially is an iPad shows up, everybody downloads an app, creates their Tippy account with us. And
All the stylists,
all
that
the
is,
stylists,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
And I say stylist, but obviously we try to say
Yeah, whoever
professionals. Now we're
the person receiving the
yeah,
tip is going to be,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So they set up an account with us. They get a full insured bank account now when they sign up. So again, they can, all the money goes in there instantly. They can ACH it out to whatever bank account they have. The whole idea is to give them instant access to their tips. So we don't require a float, and we take the risk. We actually pay the tip out instantly. So the kind of
So
backtrack.
that's huge, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, you were going through that quickly, but I will just say, like, for a lot of business
yeah,
owners, and again, for whoever the person is receiving those tips, the fact that you guys are floating these tips on processing, essentially, right, so that people can get that cash in that account immediately or on their card,
yeah,
is incredible.
yeah,
And then, again, you're taking that risk to make sure that that payment's actually going to process through. But
yeah. And that's the decision we made. We wanted to. So in a flow scenario, the customer walks up to the kiosk. If you're the hairstylist, the front desk just selects Doug, cues in the service amount, turns it around, and the customer now sees your picture and a tip amount suggested, and
that's
a
cool.
blurb that says, "Hey, this tip is going to go directly to Doug for the service provided." And the reason why the customers tip more is because they know, which is something we say, which
Yeah.
is, like, and I surveyed so many. Again, there's so much on into this. Again, not overnight. It's not like
Yeah.
everyone tells me overnight. It's not, because I surveyed. Clients used to think, well, if I write it on the receipt, they probably won't even know what I tipped, because or they're not going to know it's from me. So here's $10. And then, or if I give it to the front desk, are you sure they're going to know this came from me? Or some clients I'd interview would say they think the owner takes half of it, so they would try not to tip because they think the owner's going to take it. It was crazy, but the people, and it's not their fault. They just didn't know the process. So the fact that they know this is going directly to them, they would tip more. Not only are we suggesting it, adding a picture, but it's also be like, what? I know they're going to get the ding, because while they're sitting there, they hear the other ding go off in the previous appointment,
Yeah.
which is great, but
It's like accountability tipping, right?
yeah,
It's like,
it's like,
yeah, I know how hard my mom used to work for these tips, right? To your point.
yeah,
And so I always feel like I want to give a good tip there. And then you're always like, well, there's part in the back of your head too. It's like, well, I don't want him to mess up the next haircut or rush through it, right?
yeah, we
Because they're
need a
like, oh,
favor,
he
yeah,
doesn't tip that well, right? So like,
yeah.
it's a little fear factor there when you're figuring out, okay, what, how
Yeah.
generous I want to be here, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. You want to, like, and you, again, like, you need to get squeezed in next time or whatever it is. So,
exactly. Yeah.
but yeah, so once the client engages in that and they tip they pick their amount, got to tap their card. Again, the service professional gets a ding from our app. Hey, woohoo! You just got a $25 tip from Terry. Click on it, and they have immediate access. So they can go buy lunch with it. They can ACH it out to their bank account. They can put it in the savings. We do cashback rewards on certain things. We have a partner called Branch that we use the card for. But essentially it's a full access digital wallet, and that's
Apple Pay, Google Pay,
oh
all
yeah.
that you guys can
And
do,
that,
right?
again, that
Yeah.
was, I had those boxes checked, and that was one of the boxes, which is we start off with traditional ACH, which I didn't think was fair. It's
Yeah.
you you work hard on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which in this industry is busy days, and you don't get your tips until mid late day on Monday, because of traditional banking. I'm glad that world's changing, so we were able to kind of
Yeah.
jump in and implement it. Now you still have the access to ACH it out to Wells Fargo, whoever you have. And, it's neat to see that, because you have some people who are spenders, obviously, and that's their fun money daily. And
Yeah.
you have some people who say, hey, I'm taking half of it, goes into the savings account for the family. This is the spending money, the grocery store money. But again, that's up to them. Let's give them their funds and let them decide what they do with it.
Well, I think one of the cool pieces about that you talk about is when part of your mission is helping to financially empower the service professionals too. And I think you guys and Branch had done a study or a survey, and you had, I think, 48% of the beauty and wellness workers indicate they're more likely to save their digital tips than they are cash tips,
Yep.
right? And 82% still like having immediate access. But I think that's important. You start looking at that and you go, wow, like 48%, almost half, are probably saving now at a higher rate and creating some of that financial stability because of avenue you guys have created. That you got to feel good about that for sure.
Yeah. It's rewarding to kind of see it and know that, the industry's, and that does, it's not a look down industry, but it clearly, like you see at the 45B and this certain type of certifications, I don't think people realize, how important that the beauty industry is to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and how tips can, be 20 to 30% of someone's income. I mean, it's crazy. And if you
Yeah.
think about it, the owner likes it because it helps them, with some of the upselling services, they're going to get more in tips. So it motivates them a little bit more than a commission would. Um, I think we create something that's a little bit more personal. You mentioned Venmo, and others earlier. It's interesting to see how that's shifted. I think everyone is scared of the last 2 years because they're told they got to report it, and then IRS
Yeah.
backs out last second and says, "Oh, never mind, we'll give you another year." But you can see it's coming. The writing's on the wall, and we actually have heard stories over multiple years now where salons and whoever nail salons are using Venmo, allowing that. The owner thinks they can kind of like close their eyes on the process, but it is what it is. You're allowing a tip in your salon, you're still responsible for reporting it. And we're seeing it kind of like a trickle up effect where some of the service professionals are getting audited because of the Venmo accounts. Because again, you might have someone doing $20,000-$30,000 in tips, depending on what level they are in
Yeah.
Venmo. I mean, they're going to get a
Wow.
1099, and if they
Right.
do and they ignore it, some red flags go up. So
Yeah.
and that's where you see this trickle up, where some salons are actually getting audited because they're like, hey, your staff, we have a couple, staff members that have been on, fined. Are you allowing this? And you walk in and they have like a Venmo board up there. It's like, well, that's not great. Like, you have everyone's, and it's, to me, it's like, why that's personal information to give somebody's Venmo account and all that. Whereas I feel
Sure.
like we're a very above board in between solution that kind of protects the owner, gives the client a good personal experience, and obviously empowers the professional a little bit more than just a Venmo. I
That's
think,
really cool.
it's not to say it's a good product. It's just, I don't think for this industry, it should be a sole focus on how they handle tips or payments. I think
Yeah.
people are catching on to that now, hopefully sooner than later.
Well, I think another thing too, I didn't touch on, but you guys actually allow whoever the service professional is through their app to kind of swap back and forth about how they want to accept those tips, right? So maybe they want to put it into one account for savings. Okay, I hit whatever my amount is I want to do. Now I'm going to throw it in another checking account, right, for my spending, or I want to, throw it to somewhere else, or maybe onto a card, for example. So that's really cool to give them that immediate flexibility of fund access
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I
We
think
try to
that's
give them
unique.
all the tools. I mean, even we have the feature split tips, where if somebody has an assistant, and that assistant, they do some of the work, whether it's shampooing or helping with the hair color,
Yeah.
and the client might not necessarily know to tip them. But if I have an assistant that's helping me, I want to take that $30 tip I got and give $10 to them, so the ability to send them the funds, or split that tip with them. So again, it keeps them motivated too, and kind of helps
Yeah.
them start to really appreciate the income that they're getting.
And from the consumer's perspective too, I love how easy it is, right? So, scanning the QR code is a lot easier than going in, having to download another app, create an account, link it to my bank. Those are pieces where I think you create ease of access for the people that are using it, especially maybe in an older population in some cases too, right? Where, they don't have access to some of these knowledge pieces. And then you also have a compliance piece on the back end for the owner of the business to be able to have a little better tracking record too,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
mean, especially if we go into a required reporting scenario, you guys are going to be in a great position to be able to help them, I think, more than anybody else, it sounds like.
Yeah, and there's nothing. I mean, the QR code does work. I think the in person at the counter kiosk obviously allowed us to scale because there's no risk.
Yeah.
It's funny. I was just telling the story the other day, which is I remember when we were building the kiosk and we're like, all right, what are we gonna do here? Because I'm not big on locking people in contracts. We got to believe in our product. We got it. But
Yeah.
obviously, we're giving them hardware. And I always tell the story the day where I remember we had just got a Casper mattress. And I remember being like, hey, what's the risk? It says send it back if you don't like it. So I remember we got a Casper mattress like that year. And if you ever got one, you cut it open and this thing expands and it's a king size and it just is huge. And I'm thinking like, how you return it? Like, what's the process here? Like, I'm stuck with this thing. So it made me think like, let's make ours risk free. And I felt like, not that ours is a huge, mattress, but I'm thinking like, if it put it in for risk free, plug it in, put it on Wi-Fi. If it works, you have 30 days to send it back. And that happened to work for us. We built some other products since then, but you mentioned during COVID and people wanting to tip to show their appreciation. We built a product called Tip It Forward, which was essentially a QR code or online process of tipping. And that was really neat because clients had the ability to essentially, we gave all the salons that were with us at the time a link, and it mimicked our kiosk essentially online. And people could go on and select their stylists and give them, $20-$50. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Can't wait until the doors open back up, and then type a little personal or then type of message. And that was really cool to see. We got all these really neat messages from stylists or search professionals that said, hey, I didn't know if I was gonna be able to pay my rent this month, and I just got a couple $100s from my clients just saying they're thinking of me. Like, this is awesome.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so that was, I mean, not a huge rev thing for us, but in general is a good thing for us. Made us feel good, especially during a time when we're all like, what the heck's going on? But but we were pretty excited. And then we rolled that over into Tippy Go now, which is essentially a QR code on the go kind of tipping process, which has allowed us to explore other verticals. And then we have our integrated product too. So, which is,
well, that's a good transition. So I know we've been talking a lot about the salon world because that's your origin story, right? But that's not the only space that you guys have really dipped into right now. I know there's others on the horizon, but maybe you can just touch on a couple of the other industries where you've already seen some success and traction with those, and then maybe a couple where you think you guys might be headed in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, our side-by-sides are standalone kiosk. We did integrate our kiosk into 5 point of sales in the beauty space last year. So our kiosk becomes like a full checkout process. So that process is a single transaction. We felt it was important to do that. We had a lot of clients saying, hey, I love the product. If you could integrate it, it'd be fantastic. So we created a model for that. It allows the point of sales to go back out and offer a tipping solution with, available hardware. They can roll that into their upsell packages or whatever they want. And we motivate the point of sales as well, obviously with, some rev share, but
so basically it's a single purchase amount, including that tip piece, but the payments get separated in terms of processing.
Yeah. So we give the instructions, we still pay it out instantly. It's just a little bit different of a process, and we still found a way to give the owner some type of savings on the processing out of our pocket, where we actually give them a rebate back every month on what they would have saved with our other unit. So, we felt that.
So all these people who had been paying for a necessary service before are now getting compensated, right, for a better service.
I get an email like, hey, this is like, they forget about it too. They get an email. They're like, hey, $220 went on my account today. What's this? I'm like, yeah, that's what we helped you save, with this integration, and it's like, to them, they're
it's
like,
investing when you get in touch with Tippy, right? It's like, hey, you're gonna get a return.
And the funny part is, like, we obviously, our revenue model is based off the tip transaction. So we don't make any, like, we only charge an owner anywhere from $300 to $400 a year. That's it,
Wow.
and that just helps us cover the hardware, and we update it if there's ever an issue. If the iPad becomes outdated, we send them a brand new one. So for a $400 investment a year to save, a couple $1,000 on processing, depending on your
Yeah.
volume, pretty good trade off. I'll take that all day.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
So, but to
It's a
answer your
win.
question, yeah, because we built these suite of solutions, where if you can imagine the suite now, where we have all these what we call like tip acquisition um, products, standalone integrated kiosk, QR code, text to tip, NFC tap to tip, all these different solutions that we've built for certain verticals. And we've built all these distribution models now where you can have instant tips if you're a business model that says, no, what, I just want ACH for my customers,
Mhm.
or maybe you have, or sorry, for my employees, or maybe you want to implement a prepaid card for your employees because, it's easier for them to get prepaid cards instead of like, the bank account. Um, we have all these distributions. So we have this full suite of options now, which allowed us, and we get these inquiries now from other verticals saying, hey, notice you did this. Could you implement this and distribute our tips this way? We prefer it to be daily, not instantly. Whatever it is, we
Yeah.
can do that now. And that's opened up a lot of doors. Hospitality has been a big one. I think I think I touched on earlier, there's some other tipping companies out there that are doing a QR code, on a card in the room, and then they realize that the distribution options aren't there. So yeah, they might be able to step the tip, but they don't pay the tips out until like the end of the month. So really,
Yeah.
the room, the room service isn't really being motivated much. They're getting their tips later. So then we get a call and say, hey, can you do this? And we're like, yeah, of course. And we can pay them out instantly if you want,
Yeah.
and then that motivates their staff, obviously. Another big one that's been popping up, which totally makes sense, is pet grooming. Pet grooming.
Definitely.
I mean, for me, I think I've told you, we spend more on our dogs' haircuts than our two kids. So, it's like, so like, again, like, and I know it's not easy either for like two big golden doodles, but it's like, so tipping's important. And so we're getting a lot of inquiries from pet groomers for the same exact reasons. Pet
Yeah.
owners want to save a little bit on the processing, accepting the tip, and they're having a hard time with retention sometimes, so they want to get tips up so that groomer stays at their shop. So that's a big one. But yeah, a bunch of other quick service restaurants. We're in some wineries, breweries. I think
Hotel. Right.
hotel, hospitality.
Hospitality.
Yeah, and I think the funny, like, not the funniest one, but the best one we're in is we're in a tire shop. Guy owns a tire shop. Like, again, people want a tip. It's
Yeah.
just, can they tip? And
Yeah.
the guy that owns it, his wife was at a salon, used Tippy. She called us and she put a kiosk in the tire shop, and people tip the guys there, like, because
That's awesome.
because they appreciate them doing it, so they want to give them a couple bucks. So why
Yeah.
not? And they've been using it for a long time.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think one of the maybe appreciated aspects of how this could develop long term too from some people is that you do get a lot. It's almost like we talk about gamifying things
Yep.
sometimes, right? Or that instant gratification that sometimes is lost, especially in the service industry. So, like the tire shop's a great example. I know we have somebody who comes and treats our house outside for pests, right? And the guy comes, and at the end, I get an email with a survey like, "How did they do?" And it says, if I get a good rating, I have an option for a bonus at the end of the month based on my customer reviews, right? So, how cool would that be to have some type of an opportunity where right after you leave, if the customer liked it, based on a star rating, it equates to a certain amount of money that they instantly get in a tip,
Yeah.
right? And then that continuously, like, now the next house that person drives to go treat, they're riding the high from, I just got a tip, I'm going to go try and do a good job. So as a business owner, looking at it like, how can I use this as a motivator to get the best customer service
Yep.
out of my people, while also, again, getting money in their pockets immediately right away so that they can feel that empowerment too. So I could see it really expanding, growing in a lot of different areas. I think it's one of the cool things about what you're doing. Is there a model where you could see this being utilized outside of exclusively just the tipping environment as like a payment processing tool for an on-site service? So again, I think about service individuals. We had a company that was a septic company, and so they would go out on site. It's maybe once every 3 years the township requires them to do it. One of the issues is they were ripping off a paper receipt, and taping it to a front door. And then they're like, we're not getting payment. And it's like, well, it blows away, right? Or
Yeah.
somebody wasn't home and somebody else grabbed it and put it somewhere they never saw it, right? So, looking at some of those industries that maybe are still, they're not handing cash, but the invoicing, the accounts payable is starting to look a little stretched, right? And so that aging report gets a little scary sometimes for those people. Like, is there a way that they could expedite that without getting hit with maybe some of the fee processing issues, or even just the lack of transparency around the transaction volume
Yeah.
in some of the models that are available right now, where Tippy could potentially, solve some of those issues for them?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, we have all the products built, and they really can slice and dice anyway. Obviously, we focus solely on just instant funds to the professional.
Yeah.
To your point, we definitely are exploring more popping up. Ironically, the one you're talking about, the rating one, recently came up. Kind of like a tying tipping to the rating system because they want to motivate people to get higher ratings and
Yeah.
over service. The most relevant one that recently came up was another point of sale that they are in the beauty space, but they're also in like retail and quick service. And the idea that we had for them was for the retail space was to provide commission payout on retail products. Um, so that somebody's a salesperson for a shop or clothing, whatever it might be, they might get paid on commission, but they want to
Yeah.
do it instantly and give them that commission. So you set up a commission structure, and then once the service is done, we get notified. You know, $100 sneakers and they get $10 or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
and notifies us and we pay it out instantly. But they felt like that would motivate them to sell more. Obviously they don't go look for another job. So that's one we're exploring a little bit right now and kind of scoping out. But there's so many different ways you could slice it
Yeah.
out. It's really just a matter of like the motivator. And I will say, like, I think there's a stigma now, and trust me, I see it. And maybe I believe in karma, so I still tip everywhere. But I do think it's getting a little bit overplayed, where there are scenarios now where like you're asked to tip, that it is
Yeah.
kind of tarnishing the tipping, culture a
Yeah.
little bit. We focus solely on like professionals, service professionals, and that's where we excel. To be asked to tip when you go buy a candy bar,
Right.
at a
Yeah.
counter, I could see that frustrates people, and
Yeah.
even in coffee shops, like I still tip, but in most scenarios, there's sometimes they're not even tracking that. You might add that tip, but the owner is responsible then to go in and see how much of the tips were that day, who worked those hours, divide out that fund. And from what I've heard, like sometimes they're not doing that. So really, all you're doing is adding a tip for to the owner,
Business.
and it's up
Yeah.
to them to really pay it out. Hopefully, they are paying out the back end because they do deserve it. If somebody's behind there sweating, slinging out coffees and whatever custom coffee you
Yeah.
want, especially when I hear sometimes what people order, I'm like, man, they deserve like $5 tip because I can't even repeat what that person just ordered.
But to your earlier point, right? Like, your system encourages them to be a better business owner and to be more honest and transparent,
Yeah,
because again, they're probably making money by utilizing your system, and it's encouraging the tips to go to the people who should actually be getting them,
yeah,
right? In that
yeah.
sense. So,
That's where they
uh,
implement us so we can help with that, clean that process up, make it easier for the
yeah.
owner. There's definitely, and that's
Well,
another avenue too.
I mean, I have to say that one of the areas I really am most excited for, I hope it gets traction as quickly as possible, is in hospitality, right? Because there's nothing worse than you're getting ready to leave your hotel room and you're like, I want to leave something.
Yeah,
And, it's like you've got a 20 or you've got nothing in cash, right? And you're like, so if you could have an option like Tippy
yeah,
to say, hey, I feel like I've taken care of, the people who are going to take care of the room here for me, that would be fantastic,
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a cool space.
if we have a lot of that built or you want to tip because you walked into a clean room, like where
True. Yeah, that's a good
like
point.
so there's like we got a lot of scenarios coming up where we have the solutions built where you can tip different ways, or whether it's tied into a hospitality app or the hotel app where they can tip within there, where they could set kind of like their tipping, how I tip, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, every time I stay here, I'm going to tip this amount automatically. So, but yeah, to your point, like, especially when we go with the family, like you leave they leave the room, you're like, man, I got to go get cash because my kids
Yeah.
destroyed this place. So like, I feel bad. They got to vacuum all this up. So, no, I'm excited to keep exploring that, hospitality
Yeah.
space.
Well, and I'll say too, so I'm coming at it from a perspective of a guy who years ago had owned a staffing company for over 10 years, right before I exited that. And, I always look at retention. I look at, is this something that can drive my hiring, right? Does it give me an advantage over where my competitors are? I can only imagine like this has to be something that's, not just salon owners, but any of these different industry verticals we've talked about could use as leverage to basically help with retention because it's something that they can offer that maybe their competitors are not, but also just to say, look, here's a solution that we've seen an issue and this is how we've solved it for you via the platform that you guys have offered.
Yeah, I would say out of our daily inquiries we get, the two biggest things we get are, can you help me save some money? Yeah, especially nowadays, you have a lot of owners who are looking to figure out where they can cut cost or save money. And then the second one's the retention. How can this help me? And then we have
Yeah.
plenty of tests. I was just at a show for a massage chain, and the owner came up. One of the owners who owns about 60 some locations came up to me, and he's laughing. He goes, "I got to tell you," he's like, "just had somebody leave. One of his top massage therapists left. They go somewhere else because he thought the grass was greener." And he actually came back because he got there, realized after a few paychecks he wasn't making as much, and he realized it was because they didn't have Tippy. So he came back to them and he said to them, "You either got to put Tippy in or I got to go back." And he actually went back. I'm like, so I got that on video because that's a great.
That's awesome. Yeah. So listen, you've got people that are going to help your market share grow just because they're going to demand it of new employers, and if they don't, then they're going to return. Right?
That's all you want. I'm like, yeah, get out there, tell everybody they want it. Like, nowadays, like, hey, listen, I want a signing bonus, and you have to have Tippy in.
That's right. Yeah. Listen up, everybody. You got some strategies there. That's awesome. So, what's kind of, next for Tippy? Is there any kind of upcoming features? I know we talked a little bit about, you said you guys have a lot of different solutions out there depending on the industry, but anything you're excited about?
Yeah, I think, we're fortunate because we know the beauty space really well, and that's nothing we're going to shy away from. I feel like we paid our dues, we paved our path. So we want to keep integrating at the point of sales, providing whatever products we can do. Work on some different models that are easier to implement. It's like you get these, I take everything serious when someone's like, "Hey, we're not interested because of this reason." Okay, well, how can we make it better for you so that you will implement us? What kind of levels can we offer? So I don't think we'll ever shy away. I think that will always be a majority of our business in the beauty space because we know it so well. And we know the added benefit. But I am excited to explore these other verticals. I do think as a company, we're still a small company, about 25 people. We have, a dev team, a success team is with me in Pennsylvania. They're all from the service industry. That's the way we've hired. Everybody on the sales and support team has been behind a chair, worked at a restaurant, worked at the front desk at a salon. So when you talk to somebody, our support's fantastic, our success team, because they talk the talk and they walk the walk, and then our other team members with my partner down in Florida. But I think for us now, it's next steps are, okay, who's out there that we can really maybe partner up with, that we can start to explore other verticals, and who has extensive portfolio that we can, kind of create a win-win scenario, because we have so many solutions built and tipping's not going away. So how can we get out there and get, and it is, I wouldn't say it's frustrating, but you do see these other ones popping up that are so small. And kudos to them. I mean, we were small at one point, but we built all these solutions now that really do put us in a whole other level. I hate to say it, but I really
For
do.
sure.
It's even, I think, it's a funny story, which we had one tipping company reach out to us because they felt that they were just going to acquire us. Because they heard about us and they were told by their firm, VC firm, go out and find some others. And then they found out what we just did last year alone, and they're like, "Oh, never mind, never mind." And then they start asking for advice.
Big for that,
I'm like, I'm big. I'm like, I'll help anyone. I'm like, hey, you should think about this maybe or whatever. And again, they were focused on a certain area, so good for them. But it allows us to realize that we are at a certain level, but I think we could even be bigger. I think we can go much bigger. We have a great team. We have other verticals. We overservice everybody. How can we do it? What can we provide? Within our ecosystem, and that's, who knows, there's a lot coming up. I think we can integrate with more point of sales this year. I think in the hospitality space alone and quick service restaurants, I think there's a huge opportunity there, but we would have to integrate with some of the other point of sales or project management systems or property management systems.
Yeah, I just think it's cool. I think, you always hear about in tech, especially like a waterfall versus an agile approach. And
Yeah.
obviously you guys are more on that agile side of going, okay, what do we need to do? Let's test it. Let's fix it. Let's find a new solution, whether
Yeah.
it's a different payment, a different vertical, right? Like how do you solve the problem? And I
Pretend
think
I
that's the
hate it,
cool
but
part. Yeah, right, right, right.
they hate me when I come. I'm like, hey, got an idea. So, so
If you're like me, your notes section of your phone or your voice recorder is like full with great ideas, right? You're just
yeah. They get like Jira
waiting to
tickets.
how quickly do I hit the team with them so that I don't annoy them too much, right?
They've
But
like, yeah, they've learned
uh,
to ignore me. I think now for like 24 hours, so that
yeah.
and then I can simmer on it a little bit. And I come back, I'm like, all right, not all that, but like I do think some of that's legit.
But I think this is one of those great stories of, so many times people are like, oh, I want to be a disruptor. I want to do something great, do
Yeah,
this. And I think a lot of times it's like the simplest things. It's you listen to the people that are on the front lines that, the boots on the ground. What is it that's challenging you? What
yeah,
is it that gives you pain points? Okay, what can we do to help solve that?
yeah,
And then as you continuously address that, then you have a system. You go, okay, we have the back end built. We know how to work that component. Now it's a matter of just tweaking it
yeah,
for these individual industries. And, as we might need to change moving forward based on regulations or what have you, like we already have the foundation set. We can adjust and make alterations as we need to. So
yeah.
you guys have done a phenomenal job. I give you a ton of credit, Terry, because I think
Thanks.
it takes, sometimes the idea is easy. It's the iteration and the development and actually getting it going that obviously takes all the work and most people never get to. So to be able to do that, but then also to get the traction you've had is truly a testament to your hard work. And, obviously you've been able to bring some really good people on board too, to help continue that vision going forward. So
Yeah,
I know there's been a couple of people that have helped out in there. You guys have some partners on your website as well. I know
yeah,
you mentioned a couple, Lehigh Valley Angel Investor Group too.
yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if you want
Fantastic.
to just touch on those guys, give them a plug.
Yeah,
I know they've been a big partner as well.
yeah. I think to your point, it's I'm fortunate to have the best people around me. Because it was an idea on a piece of paper, but without Terry Durden and Lords and Ladies, and that's one thing always when if I do these talks or I talk to entrepreneurs, um, it's I know it sounds cliche, but it's like really if you can build something that's like I hate using the term like MVP, but you really can, to your point, solve a solution and
Mhm.
or solve a problem with a solution. And if you could find like what I call like the launch pad, I was
Yeah.
fortunate enough to and true story, and I don't usually say this, but the original product I built, I didn't even put it in Lords and Ladies. I put it in two other salons. I was just talking about this day actually, because I want to go back to them and show them. I'm like, I wonder if they see what we've done. I went to two
Yeah.
salons in New Jersey. I won't name their names, but went to them through a referral, and I put in the original system because I didn't think it was going to work and the way it was structured with the payments and whatnot. And I did that because I didn't want to lose my real job at Lords and Ladies. I didn't want it to backfire. And I'm like, if it backfires, I need to have a real job here. So
Smart man. Yeah.
thankfully that worked. But the whole idea was I put it in there and kind of took the risk, bare minimum, whatever I could get in there just to prove how it would work. I mean, even then, it's just like how it's structured. I look back, I'm like, oh my God, the UIs were horrible, but allowed me to be like, all right, listen, they liked it. It might not have been
Yeah.
great, but they kind of liked it. So I was able to build something then for Lords and Ladies, but I had that fortunate launch pad. And because of that, um, one of the customers that came in was one of the members of the Lehigh Angel Valley Investment Group's. His wife visited Lords and Ladies. She used it. She had told him about it. I ironically had talked to somebody. I'm like, listen, we got to get some funding here. We're not going. We don't want to go the VC route.
Yeah.
We want to do a private raise, family and friends kind of deal, and keep it clean, which we still done to date. But I've somehow circled back to Mike Karen, who's one of the members there, and went and had breakfast with him, at a diner, told him about this
Yeah.
idea. He had no clue I was talking about because he didn't know anything about the salon space.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, let me explain. So I explained it. He set up a meeting. Me and my partner David went in, and I'll never forget. I'm like, all right, I got to get 30 of these dudes, to figure out what I'm talking about in the salon space for tipping. None of them probably have a clue because they probably go to barber shops or whatever, and they all probably tip in cash. So I'll never forget. I literally put together like an explainer video, on a small budget we had. And I said, okay, here, essentially, it was like, watch this cartoon. Let me this will explain it. And then
Yeah.
obviously we talked about the finances, what it's done to date, what we think it could do, if we scaled it. And obviously that's what we really got them. But they've been an awesome group. They've been there every time we needed something, and they really allowed us to kind of have the the belief in it to go out and find the other investors. One of our lead investors is down in Florida, and some other small investors stepped in. One of them, ironically, came in later. He owned a waxing franchise. I stopped in. I was in Boston for a meeting. Walked down the street. I walked in, did a sales call, a cold call.
Yeah.
Walked in, talked to the girl. She gave me his card. Not only did I get him signed up, he called back and said, "Hey, this is a really cool idea. Can I invest?" Also, so he put in some money. So we always talk about that one. Like, that was a great sales call. No, not only did we get to use Tippy, but he got the guy that gives us
That's
some money
awesome.
too. So
Investor too, right? Invest in both worlds. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, that's like, yeah, it's like a win-win. So, but we've been pretty fortunate, to be able to have prove a concept, launch it, and really take the right process, and not raise a lot of money. We raise a small amount of money, and shocking as it may be, I think this is totally not known in the fintech space that we're profitable as of this year. So, it's like,
you're not supposed to be. Didn't you know that? You're supposed to lose money for at least like 10 more years.
Ago, you go to these events and they're like, "Listen, you're valued at this huge X, and we'll give you millions." And you're like, of course you get excited. I'm look back, I'm like, me and David are always like, "Thank God we did it." Now they're looking at us like, "Oh my God, you're profitable! Like, that's great!" Like,
didn't you know you can't be a unicorn without losing 100 million, right there? Like, you gotta spend some more here.
They try to convince you. You're like, man, like, I guess we
it's true.
That, but I'm glad we stuck with it. We're like, listen, we're gonna get profitable. First, let's get to break even. Let's get profitable. And let's and then we can take our time on what are the next steps for this company. And we really value all of our employees and everybody too. So we want to make sure we structure our next phase in this company to benefit everybody, not just investors or owners.
Oh, I know they couldn't have anybody better at the helm than you. I really appreciate you sharing your story today for sure. Obviously, we'll have some connections here and links for if you guys want to reach out to Tippy and get in contact with them. If there's any other way, Terry, that you think people should try and find you guys, let us know.
Yeah, I think just our website. That's great. Again, the success team started than I am. So if anyone wants information, they can reach out to them. And then obviously, you can find me on LinkedIn too.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to continuing to see the progress. And I'm sure you guys will be seeing Tippy pop up in more and more locations that you're visiting. I know I'm going to push my local salon to hurry up and get it in there too. So maybe you'll get at least one more customer here in the near term.
All right. Yeah. I appreciate that. Tell me to give it for free.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I know a guy, right? Oh my gosh. Well, listen, Terry, it's been a pleasure. And like I said, we're looking forward to tracking the success of Tippy moving forward. So thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it.
You got it.